Today, we are going to have a conversation with Tiffany and Chandler Tanner. Not only are they former subletters of our apartment in New York, but Chandler is running for senator in Utah, and Tiffany just won pageant for, is it Miss Emery County?
So I'm Mrs. Castle Valley and just competed in the Mrs. Utah pageant.
Okay, Mrs. Utah pageant, even better. Okay, so, and they are longtime friends of ours who we just think are doing amazing, cool stuff in business, in their family, in politics, and so we're delighted to sit down and talk with them today. Welcome to the What Could Go Right podcast. My name is Eric Orton.
I'm Emily Orton.
And here we talk about personal development, family connection, and raising adult kids. And so we are delighted to sit down with you today, and I'm going to let Emily read a little intro about you, and then we'll dive in with some questions. Sound good?
Great. Sounds great.
Yes. Okay, so Tiffany and Chandler Tanner, they once lived in the Awesome Factory, which is what we named our apartment in New York City. It was so fun. I remember getting that call in New Zealand, being like, hey, I think we're going to live in your house. They are the co-founders of this really cool children's book subscription company called Bookroo. And through that company, they've sent over 1 million books to kids and families around America, which is awesome. And they donated thousands of books to kids in need throughout Utah. Tiffany, as we heard, just competed in the Miss Utah America pageant. And Chandler, currently running for Utah's open U.S. Senate seat. These are big things. You guys are not afraid to ask what could go right. So we're super excited to chat with you today.
It's great to be here.
We're excited, to be here with you.
Okay, so I want to go back to, we're going to get into all the big stuff, but I want to start small first. I remember when we were kind of traveling with our family, and we'd been out of our apartment for quite a few months. And we were, as you mentioned, Emily, we were living in New Zealand at the time. And maybe you can help me remember the details, because you guys were subletting our apartment, and then you.
I think you were looking for a place to stay in New York, and then we got in touch about this potential sublet, and you were like, wait, I think my wife just gave me your book.
Yeah.
Is that right?
That's exactly right. Yeah. We had just had our fourth baby, so she was a couple weeks old, and we just wanted to come back to New York City because we had lived there when Chandler was working at a law firm. And so it had just been Father's Day. I saw your book at Deseret Book, and I picked it up because my husband actually really has an interest in sailing. So I was like, this is a perfect book. It's about family in New York. Gave it to him. And then, Chandler was looking for a place to stay. And
exactly. I mean, that journey was actually really impactful for us because, like Tiffany said, we'd been in the city before, and we just felt like there was, we needed to spend some more time there. I'd gone out on a business trip a few months earlier and just felt like, Tiffany, I think we need to be back in New York. Little did we know that we were moving there, right before the COVID pandemic would hit. So we had no idea what was ahead of us. We just had that feeling, and really, it was like we'd put everything on the line. We sold our home in Provo. We had a beautiful little pioneer home in Provo, our dream home. Sold it, moved in with parents. Air flights just kept going up and up, and we just were like, we feel like we need to be there, but how is this going to work? And finally, one night we're like, we really need to buy our tickets. They're just getting more and more expensive. So that very night, we bought the tickets, and later that night, I was looking for apartments, and that's when I saw your listing and reached out. And I mean, it was just, for us, it was that step into the dark, and then the path illuminated.
yeah, it really was that act of faith, that prayer in our hearts. Like, okay, we're going to show that we know we need to be there. We're going to buy the tickets. And then your place opened up. So it was amazing.
Then we'll figure out where to live.
Yeah.
No, I was keenly aware of the sequence as you said that. It was like we have 4 kids. We sold our house. We bought tickets to New York. That was everything we had in order.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And that's amazing. And I'm so happy that you guys could stay in that place. It's been such to me, it's such a sacred place because of how much our family has grown there and how much we learned and experienced, and how that was like our safe place and our refuge as we also transitioned into New York City and the incredible experience that was for us for over 2 decades. And so I love for that apartment to be kind of that refuge and that starting place for people when they're coming to the city. And everyone who moves in there now, I say like, hey, this is supposed to be your your refuge while you're here and figuring out what's next.
And then the other thing that I remember, and then we'll get into some other stuff. We'll stop talking about us. But I remember you were reading our book, and I think you said to your kids, "This is the decision table."
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Tell us about that.
Do you remember that conversation?
Or bring us from whenever you're on that journey that you want to. But we'd love to hear.
Yeah, I mean, it was so fun because, like Tiffany said, she had just given me the book. We started to read it. Connected with you guys. It was work out to be in your apartment. And so there we are in New York City having this adventure as a family while we're reading your family's adventure of doing what you did to pull it off, to take your family sailing, to have that intentional, I know that you guys have been very intentional, and that's something that we try to do too, is be very intentional. And it was very impactful to read about seeing life go by and life, wanting not those moments just to go by, but to be intentional about what memories are we going to make with our kids before they're out of our home. And so, yeah, like we're sitting around your dinner table having our dinners and telling our kids, like, this family that we're reading about, this is their home. We're in it right now. In fact, we like to call ourselves the Awesome Factory cohort of 2019. I don't know how much.
Yes.
I love it.
Anyway, just that idea that like this is the decision table, because we love that table. It's a square for our listeners. It's a square table that Emily and I bought at Costco, I think, when we first got married, and it's got blue legs and it's got drawers where you can put napkins into it. And we've since you guys were there, we put casters, red wheel casters, so that you can roll it around the apartment and move it. And we just love that table because, yeah, we've gathered around it and had so many conversations as a family with our kids, and we've made a lot of decisions, and it's an honor to us that you guys were sitting around the table having your own family discussions with your kids and making decisions about how to move forward in your lives. And so the fact that we got to share the same decision-making table is...
It's true. Like that table has become so important to our kids. They're incredibly emotionally attached to it because I think everyone... sometimes I hear about like family dinners and, we need to have family dinners. And it doesn't really matter whether you're eating or not. The point is having this place where you can gather and look in each other's eyes and find out what's going on and how everyone's feeling and what we want to do next and how we feel about what happened last. And that was that place for us in that home. And it sounds like it was for you as well. So anyway, it's still there. With some nice ladies who are living there, and the kids, like, they want it. They want us to have it.
So let's dive in. First of all, you guys are just delightful, and we're super excited to have this conversation. You have been very intentional in your lives. I know you said you started out in law. Chandler, you started in law, and then you guys went into business not only together, but with some family members, as I understand it. And I want to unpack that a little bit. And then you've also taken time to continue your educations, both in the U.S. and in the U.K. And we'd love to hear a little bit about that. And then you've continued to, I'm not going to say reinvent yourself, but you've continued to innovate. You were in New York for a time, and your business is mobile enough that you can be in different locations. And so now you're in, dare I say, rural Utah?
Absolutely, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Rural Utah, down close to, on the way to Moab, which I know and love. And so just walk us through a little bit of your timeline, and then some of the, maybe get into Bookru a little bit, and then we can keep going from there. But just some of your decision thinking.
Yeah, tell us your story, and we might not know all the parts, so you'll know the parts that are most important to you if we haven't called them out. You bring them up.
Yeah, sure. So
take it away.
We had our first baby while we were living in New York City, and as you guys know, getting to a bookstore, a library can be tricky, with the subway system and a stroller. You have to rely on the tender mercies of the other passengers of the subway. And so Bookru kind of hit close to home for us as we, lived there. And then the timing of it was just perfect because Chandler was getting ready to leave law. And so we left New York City and came to Utah and realized there wasn't a subscription for children's books. And it just was perfect because that is what we would have loved to have as a new mom in New York City. We needed new books, but it's tricky to get them.
Real quick, I was just going to say, Book Grew is a book subscription series where you send books to, and maybe you should say it, but basically you're sending books on a steady basis to homes for.
Yeah, you can describe it.
Yeah, why don't you go ahead and give us just a quick overview?
Yeah, so it's about 10 years old now, and it started as a book club to help families build home libraries very conveniently, affordably, of terrific stories. And over those years, we keep, like you mentioned, innovating and improving the service. And in fact, since we were on camera today, we made sure to display. These are examples of where Book Crew is now with our subscription box. So these days, we do a ton of research to find the books that we want to feature. And then we actually work with publishers, printers, and designers to do a custom edition of the book. So that, what we see, sadly, and we think books make the best decorations, but we see like some kids' bookshelves, the books are turned like this all along the way. So it looks nice aesthetically, but we said like we can do better than that. We can kill two birds with one stone. So we can send families really great stories that also look really good on the shelf. So everybody's happy. Mom's happy, dad's happy, kids are happy.
Yeah, so we have the uniform height and then the nice design that looks good together.
I love it. It's beautiful. And for all of our listeners that are listening in your earbuds, go to YouTube and check it out. It's worth a peek. All right. So thanks for the snapshot view of the business. And so, Tiffany, back to what you're saying about you're a young mom and you're in Utah, and so you start this book subscription series.
Yeah, and Chandler's ready to leave law. So this came at the perfect time. That's where we interrupted
it's a
you.
perfect time to start a business when
Yeah.
you're ready to quit your job.
It really was perfect because in New York City, we had like 5 books for our new baby, and when you're reading, at night, you read a few books and they got old really quickly. So I searched for a long time online to find new books for my baby, and I just was like, this is taking way too much time. I actually don't know if it's going to be a great book. And one of the books I ordered was like 2 inches, and I was like, oh my goodness, like, how did I end up with that out of all the good books out there? So, yeah, we moved to Utah and got together with some family. Chandler jumped from the law ship. I guess you did.
Yeah. I mean, the early days are some of like the best when you're looking back at it. It's kind of terrifying at the time sometimes because you don't know what the outcome is going to be. But we started it, typical startup type deal where it's in the garage, it's in the basement. Initially we're in our parents' basement. But when we look back at it, these are some of our favorite memories. Originally, before we were able to do these original like additions with our custom spines, we would wrap the books so that it was like a really fun unveiling experience for kids and build some excitement around reading. So we would have these fulfillment parties where, because like you mentioned, we were in it with some family members, and so we'd gather at the basement on the weekend, the fulfillment weekend, and we would wrap and box all night till the wee hours of the morning.
Yeah, and partly because we had 2 little kids, so we had a almost 2, maybe just barely 2-year-old and like a 3-month-old little baby. And so they would be there with us, laying on the couch or helping us, helping wrap those books. And then we'd put them to
Helping
bed.
in quotes, right?
Yeah, exactly. And then we'd really get the work done after they went to bed. So.
Then the next morning we'd have, it kind of, just grows bit by bit. Like initially it's like the next morning we would load the boxes into the back of the car and drive to the post office. And then it came to be that the post office would come to us and we'd load them into the back of the car and they would take them to the post office. And, these days finally we're able to not spend our time doing those things. And instead, the books get printed, they get shipped to our fulfillment center in South Salt Lake. And then they get the trucks and pick up the boxes and do that stuff for us. So it's been progressive. It's been step by step, and we're really excited now. It's been for us like the most fun space we could be in. Mm-hmm. Really, it's a space that we care a lot about. It's so applicable because we've got 4 young kids, and
yeah, it's been the perfect research for us to read to our kids, and they tell us what books they like and what they don't. It's been really fun.
Wow, now I'm extra honored that our book made the cut, because we
That
know
they
you,
read it,
you
yeah.
guys are like, selective, highly curated readers.
No, but that's
That's
so
a beautiful
wonderful.
story.
Yeah, I love that story, and it's a true family business. It's a family business that even your, 2-year-old and 3-month-old could be there, and they're part of the research team,
Yeah.
and that your business is also helping other families. Like, it's family to family, really.
Yeah.
That family to family business. I like that. That's really cool.
Yeah.
And
like
because
that.
you're in business with siblings, is that right? I don't know which sibling or whose siblings.
So it's 2 of my brothers and their wives. I've been the co-founders. Yeah. So it's been. I mean, you hear sometimes people say like, don't go into business with family, but for us, we've been so glad to share this journey with family. It's like those high moments you wouldn't choose to share that with anyone else. It's been really meaningful, and the low moments as well. Like, fortunately, everyone on the team is really mature, and like we haven't had too many hard things to work through, but we do, and we come out of it stronger because of it, and makes the highs even better. So we wouldn't pass along that advice. It's actually been really meaningful. I don't know if it's for everyone, but for us, it's been a win to be in it with family.
Yeah.
It's actually great to hear. Sorry, go ahead, Tiffany.
Yeah, no, you're good. I just was going to say, so while it's his 2 brothers and their wives, we've had a lot of other of his siblings and parents help us along the way. When we were wrapping books, they'd come and join our fulfillment parties and help us wrap. And it really has been like a whole family affair. And everybody's been so supportive. And that's been great too, to have other people come along and help us. And hopefully we help them. And it's been really great.
Oh, that's awesome. Congratulations. Just, we have this, sometimes we talk about it, this whole navigator framework. And the first part is choose your own island, right? When you pick that aspirational dream, you don't know if it's going to work, but that's what you head for. And then when you get to the other end, it's drop anchor, and how important it is to say, hey, we did it, and just mark those little milestones along the way. So yeah, congratulations. I'm sure you'll continue to grow and continue to innovate, but where you are right now is incredible. So bravo.
So yeah, to have any business that's survived 10 years, let alone support 3 families and probably plenty of others, is a massive accomplishment. So super impressive.
Yeah.
So we met you. You were sort of in the middle of developing Book Crew, and you're living in our apartment, and then COVID comes along. So talk to us about that. Like, what was the next kind of inflection point for your family after you were there?
Yeah, no, I mean, that what we got ourselves into there, we didn't know what we were getting ourselves into, I should say. And I have to highlight, while we were at your apartment, I want people to know this, that, we said I think we agreed like initially a couple of months or something, and then we said, hey, could we stay a little bit longer? And you said sure, and said, could we stay till like we come home for Christmas to visit family? And you said, yeah, we'll make, that can work. Little did we know that meant that for a few nights you were sleeping on the floor at friends' homes in the area while you let us keep your beds for those additional nights. So, so generous.
Oh, yeah.
I think we
went.
were staying at my parents', and we came up for the Christmas concert or something.
Yeah, we went up to Lori's.
Oh yeah. Anyway, we were happy to do it. Happy to do it.
It was a tender mercy
generous.
for us. It really was.
But because we were there in the city, I mean, we have the most remarkable picture that you could appreciate. I mean, we were because people were leaving the city, because rents were going through the floor. We actually snagged this amazing place through another set of friends there that is like our dream place. It was just a few steps from Central Park. In fact, you guys know it well, because when the lockdowns opened up a little and you could have visitors again, we gathered there at that place. So
I remember it. Yeah.
I think we helped
oh yeah, and you have
move
this
a little bit too. I remember like
this-
feeling like I'm in Book Crew a little bit because I helped move all these books.
All these books.
We were the Book Crew cohort of
I was like,
2020.
oh, they were in our apartment with all these books.
We don't own a lot of much, but we do own a lot of books.
Yeah.
It's a good way to live, in my opinion.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
So you guys moved
Okay,
downtown.
so yeah, you went to this beautiful place. Yeah, tell us about what happened next.
Well, we have a picture where the kids are playing in, what is it, Sheep Meadow? I never remember.
Yeah, Sheep Meadow.
There in Central Park, and we take a picture of them facing the Manhattan skyline with no one, absolutely no one behind them, which you just will never see. Like, it's just remarkable. So,
Wow.
yeah.
Yeah, you can Photoshop it to create that, but to get it spontaneously like that, it's special. And
That's impossible. Yeah.
not to like just reminisce about COVID in New York City, but I remember we went down to, it was all during the lockdown, and we had moved back into our apartment at this point, and we went downtown to Times Square.
To exercise, quote unquote, because we were allowed out once a day to exercise.
And we were just riding skateboards around in Times Square because there were no cars. And we just thought, this is crazy to have a New York City Times Square empty of cars. And so, to your point, to have Central Park empty of people,
Yeah.
it was a wild time.
What an amazing photograph for you guys. And
Okay, so COVID in New York
Crazy
City.
memories.
Just keep walking us through it. We're just going on a journey with
Yeah.
you. I love
You
it.
know, I love it because it sounds like you were there with us in New York City. Everybody was leaving and we were like, we just got here. Like, we thought we were supposed to come and stay, so we're going to stay. And some of our most special moments, you know, are there in New York City. And it was a journey down to that beautiful apartment Chandler was talking about. We had an in-between after your place. We had like slowly worked our way down to this dream place. But some of our greatest memories with our kids, I mean, homeschooling and just figuring it all out, which you guys were really helpful on the homeschool scene too, you know, moving to New York City and needing to homeschool our kids. So
I was so happy to hear that your kids were enjoying the piano. Like, we had left this piano, and not everybody wants a piano in their house, but you're like, hey, that's so fun.
And you know, we still talk about that because they loved that they could plug the headphones in.
Isn't that the coolest feature? Yeah, and again for our listeners, we have this acoustic Yamaha piano that I remember a good friend of mine who was a really accomplished pit musician on Broadway shows. He had one in his apartment, and I saw it, and I was like, that's what I need. And
That's how you are a musician in New York.
it's an acoustic piano that you can plug headphones into, and you drop the pedal and it lifts the hammers off the keys so that you can play it like a weighted keyed piano, but it's just going into your headphones and not going to bother your neighbors or anyone else in the apartment. So you can play beautiful music and still be a good neighbor.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. The Awesome Factory was a great place for us. I mean, the piano and the table, the decision table was great. Our favorites, was the view of the park just across the street. I mean, that was just invaluable for our kids. And that's interesting because it's like you've talked. By the end, we made it to our dream apartment, and that was in and of itself, drop anchor and like feel satisfied about that moment. But some of our most meaningful memories and most valuable memories are like the bit that was hard in between, like going from your apartment, which was really comfortable. The next place was not so much. I mean, I'll tell you the details because we have time to do it. Like, we again found a sublet, and it was from a single gal who would split her time between her apartment there and Chicago. And she said, you can rent my place as long as I can come and crash occasionally when I'm in the city. I need a place to stay like for a night or two. And we said, okay, I think we could handle that. So it's in Washington Heights, and it's a 2-bedroom apartment. And our first weekend back from the holidays, we just barely get there, probably like on a Thursday, do a deep clean the next morning. And I think by Saturday night, she's like, I have to make an emergency trip to the city, and I need to stay at my apartment. So here we are in a strange place that was not very clean in the first place. That's why we had to do a deep clean. And then next thing we know, we have a stranger on the couch in the front room. And it was just a lot to take in a couple of days.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. That's a
Oh
lot.
man, that's so New York.
But that's
you know,
a lot.
it's that journey that we're talking about because, I mean, she was such a great person and we got to know her and, it was fun. Like, we had a roommate, but she was great and she didn't mind our 4 kids and,
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
As long as we're reminiscing, I have to tell you about my first night in New York
Oh boy.
because it connects to this piano. This guy that I was telling you about that owned the piano, and I was inspired by. I had traveled to New York City because I was looking at grad school at NYU and going into the theater industry, and he worked in the theater industry, and so my orchestration professor made an introduction, and so I'm staying with this guy, and I don't know him.
Don't know him at all.
He's a dear friend, David now. But at the time, he's a total stranger, and it's him and his wife. His wife plays harp. He's a pianist, and they agree to let me come stay with them while I'm looking at programs. And they live in a studio apartment, no bedrooms, so it's a studio apartment, and I get uptown, and they pull out their futon and they make their bed, and then I literally I don't even know if I had an air mattress or what, but I'm literally laying on the floor next to them. And it's like,
And they knew that when they said yes, but you didn't know that when you were asking. And so it was a big surprise. And it's just a little insight into just how generous and accommodating people can be in New York City. They're like, I get it. It's hard. Like, we have enough square footage for your body to fit right here. You can lay down.
So it was like I had a slumber party with David and Tara, and I didn't even know them. And they got up the next morning, and they took showers and went to work, and I had the place to myself, and and I had to get up and get ready, and I left for the day as well. And I just thought, oh my goodness, these people have hearts of gold to just let like I can hear them breathing, and they can hear me. So anyway, I just love how New York brings us together in ways that we never would anywhere else in the world. So
This is such a bonding.
okay, so
funny.
you're living in a beautiful apartment downtown. You're close to Central Park. You're running your own business. You're homeschooling your kids.
And you feel like, hey, we should be in New York. But now you're not. So then what happened?
Yeah, keep walking us through it. Keep us walking us through the pivots and decisions.
So we thought we were there till the next summer, and then back home. I actually had my grandpa passed away, so I came out for the funeral and was here in Orangeville, and we just felt. We loved our time in New York City, but by the end, even with Central Park right there, the 4 kids in small apartments, it just was like the other side of the world to come to Orangeville. And we felt like it would be good to come to Orangeville, to a different environment for a bit.
Well, and the people we were subletting from were coming back, so it just was like that timing again. They were ready to come back to New York, and Grandma's house was here, and we just felt like, oh, that's a special thing. Like, let's go by Grandma's house, and so it was a good timing. It was interesting we were just there during COVID, and then we came back. So
And
For the best part.
yeah.
and fill me in. When did you go to Oxford? Was that
That's coming in the future.
okay? Did I give it away? Oh,
No,
sorry.
you're fine. So we came to Orangeville, and we were here for a year. Basically, just enough time to fix up Grandma's house and then leave.
Make it nice and then
Yeah.
get out of
Yeah.
town.
Yeah, and we really were. So Oxford had been on my radar for a while. So at BYU, I learned about Rhodes Scholars, and I was not a Rhodes Scholar. I'll just make that clear right now. But it was very intriguing, the thought of getting
You are to me. You are to me.
to get to study at Oxford, and I had thought that the window had closed. So I just kind of moved on, and just one of those, small promptings, a small thought to look, and I looked and came across this part-time master's program in history that they offered, and thought, wow, that might be a way to still do this. So I made application and thought that the interview went terrible, thought there's no way I'm going to get accepted.
Your British accent was totally off.
Yeah, my British accent. Yeah. Called them fries instead of chips, made all kinds of cultural
Oh
faux
man,
pas.
yeah.
But then we did get accepted, and so then, it was so much more meaningful to do it as a family than it ever would have been to do it on my own earlier. The timing of that, again, was just really inspired and really a blessing. But it put this deadline for us to have to finish this house because we were going to Airbnb it while we were gone. And so we made a big calendar on a big whiteboard in our room and did what had to happen every day to be ready to leave by the time we had to leave. And we were here like the night before till 2 a.m. We didn't even sleep in the home one time once we had
it was finished.
Airbnb ready.
Wait, so you were fixing up? You weren't living in it. You were staying with family or something nearby?
We were living in it. So
but you never got to like enjoy it completely.
yeah, I mean, there was, paint projects going on. So you have like everything in the middle of the room while you're painting the walls. And so it never was in order before we left.
And then, so not even one night in the finished house before you had to like jump on a plane and go.
We got it all staged. We're like, oh, wow, look how nice it looks. Like Chandler said, like 2 a.m, jumped in the car and headed north so that we could go to the airport the next day.
Classic.
Yeah.
You're like, good thing we have a really long flight. Hope everyone sleeps.
We've been through a few of those.
Oh my gosh. Okay. 2 things I really loved about what you just said in that, though, was that you thought the window had closed, that there was an opportunity that had kind of caught your attention early on when you were I won't say much younger, but previously, and now some years had passed and you were like, well, it's too late for that. Like I made my choice. I took this path and that path. And then but because the thought occurred to you, you didn't just dismiss it. You then looked into it. You didn't say, oh, it's too late. It's too late. You're like, well, let me check. Anyway, so I love that you said you thought the window had closed, but you double checked and the window was open.
Yeah.
So I love that. And I also love that you said that it was more meaningful to do it with your family, because so many times we hear people say things like, well, I have to like do all this fun stuff before I have kids, or even this idea of, it's called like a baby moon, where people are expecting their first baby and they're like, well, we better do like an all out vacation, because after this, life is pretty much over for us and it's all about the baby, right? Yeah. And so I love
gloom after the baby moon.
So I love that you said like being able to go with my whole family to live in England and have this experience and share, creating these memories, and how it opened their eyes to have, live in another culture for a time or whatever. You'll know like what the benefits were for your family. But I just wanted to pull that out because that really struck me, that you said like, this was actually even better than had I opened that window the first time I thought of it.
Well, and on the flip side, a lot of people will say, well, I'm not going to do the things that once the kids move out. I mean, you guys aren't there yet, but a lot of people say we're going to postpone doing the things that we really are excited about in life until after the kids move out, instead of doing it with them. And so I think there's 2 ways to look at that. And we're not dissing on anybody that, goes on a baby moon or decides to do something fun after the kids leave. I'm sure we're going to do some of that once our kids are all out.
We're just going to keep doing it all the way through.
but just that you can have it all. You can do it before your kids are born. You can have it while you have kids with you. You can do it after your kids leave out. There doesn't have to be a big blank spot in the middle of your life. And you guys are great examples of that. I think that's what you're getting
that's
at.
what I'm trying to say. I love that. So please tell us about that and how that experience was for you and your family.
Yeah, well, when Chandler got into this program, we did talk about different ways he could do it. Like he could have just flown over a weekend or 2. And me, I was like, I want to go. Don't leave me. Take me with you.
Heck yeah.
So again, we went back to the homeschooling thing. And I just think there's no better way to homeschool than just to be out in the world. They learned so much more out seeing these other cultures and places and castles and old history than they would have at home in school. And that was really neat. And it still is, we'll watch movies or read books and they'll say, oh, that place, and they can picture it in their mind because we visited it. And that has been so neat to see that in our kids. And since we were in England, we did take some trips to other countries there in Europe, and Chandler speaks Spanish. And so when we were in those other countries where they were speaking Spanish or French, we tried to learn a little bit of their language. And our little girl still, every time she says the prayer, she'll pray in Spanish or French, rarely in English, but.
Wow, that's sweet.
Yeah, that exposure that they get, like you said, is just, invaluable. We have great teachers here who have been very supportive as well, supportive as well of helping, support that, not
Yeah.
act like we're putting them out or something for our kids to be in school for a year when we were here, and then they're gone while we're there, and then they're back again this year, and the teachers welcome them back, the classmates welcome them back, and that's been beneficial. But my parents did a similar thing to what I think you did for your kids. We didn't go sailing around the world quite, but when I was 10, I grew up here in the small town of Orangeville, but they took us to the Dominican Republic, where my dad had served his mission as a young man. So that's the country that he knew. And they took us there so that we could understand the wide world, outside of Orangeville, Utah, and get some exposure. And that experience has been invaluable for me. And I think that similarly for our kids, their experience of seeing other areas, being exposed to other languages, foods, architecture, everything. They didn't get quite the shell shock that you get when you go to the Dominican Republic. And I'm going to still take them there because that the third world developing thing is a whole different ball game. But Europe was a good start.
New York is a little bit first world and third world all together.
Yeah, New York's a good combo of the old world and
That's
the third
true.
world,
Yeah.
or developing. Yeah, I guess is the more term we like now.
And I guess to just going back to Oxford, and when your kids, I mean, I've never been there, but I know that in England, for us, like we live in an old house. It's 120 years old, the house that we bought here in Utah. And you said you bought a pioneer home that you sold. And so those are, I'm guessing, maybe 100 years old?
Yeah, like early 1900s, exactly, yeah.
And then you go to England and like, oh, it's a baby house. It's only been around 100 years. It's like things that are old for them are 700, 800, 900 years old, 1,000 years old, and they're still in use and they're still standing.
Yes.
And so in the United States, we just can't fathom things, buildings, structures, places that have, not places, but just things that have been built that are still in use that are that old.
That old, yeah.
And so, those kinds of experiences shift your perspective on all kinds of stuff.
So true. I mean, my thesis was in modern English history. That's 1800s forward. Yeah. So,
Modern,
that's
the
modern.
past 225 years.
You're right on.
Love it. Okay. So you get your master's in history at Oxford, and then time is up, right? Where do you go from there?
So when we finished, our send-off was the best. I will have to tell you a little bit about the send-off. So we finished the program. I actually finished it from Utah remotely, but on our last bit that we needed to be in England, we went to Spain, and we went on this amazing cross-continental rail trip with the kids. Not like a luxury rail trip like you might take for a vacation. This was like another family adventure. So there are those rail carts, like they look beautiful. It's all nice and cozy. And so ours was not that, although it was still amazing. So we went from Spain over along this Riviera to Italy, and then north to Amsterdam, and flew out of Amsterdam. But there was a part of the trip that we like to call. So in total, I think we were on 41 trains, did 4,000 miles of train travel, and 11 countries. But I was still working on my thesis, so I was trying to travel and study, and so we went on this part that we call the Tiffany loop, because Tiffany made it happen. So tell them about the Tiffany loop.
Yeah, since he was studying and I got to take a little more charge of the decisions, I wanted to go to Venice. It was actually right during the Carnival happening. So we went through Venice, and then we went up to Austria, through Innsbruck, and up to Munich, and saw the Disneyland castle. And it just was so fun. So we wouldn't have done that because we were only in those places like a couple days, or one, they were really quick trips as we went up through. But I just wanted our kids, to get a little taste of each one of those on our way through. And then we went back down to Switzerland, and then up to where we originally would have gone had Chandler continued to lead us.
Let's just throw in the Neuschwanstein Castle and a little bit of Carnival.
That's the one, yeah.
Yeah.
Love it.
Oh, that's so fun. That's awesome.
Yeah, it was neat.
And those things, And I'm just going to say, because just like your trip to the DR impacted you when you were young, I'm a kid who also grew up in Europe. I lived in Germany for 5 years from 5 to 10 years old. My dad was in the military, and we would do these little trips to these other countries. And I just tell you, it affected me, and I think it'll affect your kids. And those are things that are going to ripple out for years and decades to come in their lives, and they'll never forget that stuff. I mean,
I feel like it didn't show up for 20 years. Like, I think you did it. It kind of went latent for 20 years, and then it like bloomed up. Like, we must.
I just
get
think
our
I
kids out there.
was just trying to figure out how to make it happen. I always knew I wanted to. So anyway, I just think what a treasure to give your kids, and to go out of your way and to say, well, Dad can go over there by himself and study by himself, and we can hold down the fort here in this beautiful new home that we've just fixed up. And, and it will be comfortable and easy, but
we have family nearby.
And, anyway, that you sacrificed a lot. You sacrificed a beautiful, comfortable home that you just spent time on. You spent time being comfortable around people in a place that you knew very well. And so there's always, I mean, it's always nice to hear about, just this, the perception is, oh, traveling across Europe, what a luxurious.
How nice for you.
How nice for you. But there's a sacrifice involved, and there's a price to be paid, and then there's a payoff as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's very draining to travel that much. Like, it's exhausting, and you have to really kind of, especially if you're like, I'm trying to get a master's degree. Like, I'm not just here to have a party. And you're like, I'm homeschooling the kids and I'm doing so much by ourselves. And P.S. meanwhile, we're still running our business, from wherever we are, but now on a time difference. And, it's not to say like everything is just so easy and smooth. Like, it's a real decision that you make that this is going to be harder, but we think it will be worth it.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because honestly, when we first connected with you and learned your story, and when Tiffany gave me the book at first, I kind of had a similar impression of like, oh, they took a year to go sailing with their family. They must be independently wealthy, and how cush and how special for them. I'm so glad they wrote a book about
how
it.
Nice.
So I could read.
Yeah.
So then when you dig into it and you read your story and you read, you're not coming at it from like this convenience of you worked really hard and were very inventive and very intentional and very innovative in finding ways to make that happen. We feel like it's very similar to our experience. And
I love how you say, like, whether it's your time in Europe or your time in New York, or as you start up your business, like all of these things, like when you're in it, you're like, oh man, we want to solve this problem. We want to solve this problem. And then once you get past that problem and you look back, you're like, wasn't that fun?
Yeah.
Remember how we used to stay up till 3 a.m. with everyone we know wrapping books?
Exactly. We missed it.
We were sharing an apartment with some strange lady on the couch. And
it just brings so much, I don't know. It's just, it brings the character and the flavor to your life, and it does start to build your identity, and you're like, hey, we're the kind of people, we look at everything we've figured out, we can figure it out, and so anyway, that's so great. So that send-off sounds amazing, just that railway trip,
victory lap around Europe.
Yeah.
It was so nice.
So you get on flights out of Amsterdam and you fly back to Utah, I presume. Is that where you?
Mm-hmm.
Did you fly back into Salt Lake?
Yep, back to Utah.
And then you have a nice 2-hour drive down to Orangeville.
Yeah, and you know what? We stayed with Chandler's family. We might have still had people booked here at the Airbnb. So this past year, we had enrolled our kids in Springville School, elementary school. And they were also really good at working with us, taking time over to England. In fact, they worked with us so well that my son, he really wanted to be in the school play. And the stars aligned, and we came home from Europe, from Amsterdam, and he practiced his play and performed later that month. So it's interesting, what could go right. Things can just go right if you take these risks and you're intentional. And I mean, a lot of our belief is, we have faith, we pray, and we have that help from above, and he helps line things up to work out. And like you said, it's hard, but it's so worth it to make that extra effort, and it always pays off. So that was a neat experience to come home and let him grow in that way. And then from there, we did come back to Orangeville after they finished the school year.
And everyone said, oh, good, you're finally back in Orangeville. Things are going to be nice and quiet for you. Simple life for a little bit. And then a few months later, we said, well, guess what? Tiffany's going to compete in the Mrs. Utah pageant, and I'm going to run for this open Senate seat.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. So now we're going to talk about
the present day.
the current islands that you're pursuing. I love it. Okay. So where do you want to start? Do you want to talk about the Miss America Utah pageant or Senate? You guys get to pick.
In both cases, we are like completely clueless. So
Like
you're
we know
gonna have
nothing
to
about.
guide this.
We know
Yeah.
nothing about having grown up in Washington. After I left Europe, we moved to Washington D.C. and that's
I
where
moved
Emily grew
there
up.
when I was 10.
So and I've toured the U.S. Capitol, and we had some congressmen in our ward and things like that. But
The main thing we learned was like, oh man, if you go into politics, people hate you no matter what you say.
as a prelude to you talking about running for Senate, I just want to say this. This is my big experience in politics.
Oh,
In
okay.
the 8th grade, without telling my mom or my dad or anybody really, I decided to run for student body president of my junior high school. Campaigned, somehow
Gave a speech.
Got elected student body president, and did the whole student government thing. And I was a good student, but I got myself into a little bit of trouble here and there, and because I was a visible leader, I got a little bit extra reprimanded and things like that. And then I just realized this just feels like a lot of extra work, and nobody's ever happy with what you do. And I was like, I'm ending my career in politics right now. and I have stayed true to that for the past, I don't know how many years.
And I will say, Eric, just because I don't want people to come up in their imagination what Eric maybe got reprimanded for, but there was a blizzard and their school bus got stuck in the snow. They were just in traffic, not in snow, but like in traffic because of snow.
Gridlock because of a blizzard.
Yeah, just this horrible gridlock because of a blizzard. And he was like, just his mind was working like,
I've camped in worse weather.
I've camped in worse weather. How could I get out of this situation? It doesn't have to be this way. My house is like 20 minutes that direction. And so he just said to a buddy, can you throw me my backpack? I'm going to hop out this window and you just toss my backpack out to me. And so he just got out, got his backpack, got himself home really quick. And when the snow melted and that school was back in session, they were like, you cannot do that. That's not okay. And he was like, well, then I'm not going to be in politics.
It was a few miles from home, but anyway, we'd been in our stuck in traffic for hours, and I was like, this is anyway. So yeah, you have to follow the rules when you're a leader, and I'm not always good at following the rules. So anyway, but that was my foray into politics, and I've never done any kind of pageant, so and probably won't.
Yeah.
So all that's to say is teach us, coach us up, tell us about the journey and what made you want to do this, because we're just as the great thing about us as people is we all have different interests and pursuits and things that spark us and make us feel excited.
Alive and excited. Yeah.
And you've chosen things that we probably will never choose. So we're super curious. What is it that draws you to it? And tell us your journey. So.
Yeah. Well, thanks for sharing yours. I love that. I'll start with mine. Mine happened a little before Chandler's. So while we were up in Springville, we went to a ball. They have a museum there, and they call it the Art City Ball. So we went to that, and we dressed up in our evening gown. And did you wear a tux? Probably just a nice suit. Anyway, my mother-in-law saw our picture and said, you should do this pageant. And I was like, I'm married, I have kids. Like, she obviously knows that. I just didn't know there was a married woman pageant. So that's all she said, you should do this pageant. So then I was curious. It just stayed with me. I kept thinking about it. I had never done a pageant before, so this was all new to me. I looked it up, and it said Mrs. Utah America pageant celebrating the married women of Utah. And at that time, it just felt important to celebrate marriage and married women. So I kept thinking about it. I couldn't even apply yet until the fall. But pretty much as soon as it opened, I just knew I should try. And it was a new focus for me. Our kids are getting bigger, and it felt like something good to focus on. So when you apply for it, you can pick a title. So I chose Mrs. Castle Valley because that's the name of another title for Emery County. They have these beautiful castle-like rock wall formations. And so I love that, but it also was a little connection to England since we'd just come back from the real castles. So I just loved that connection too. And so once I decided to join the pageant, we also get to choose a platform. And so having traveled around, and having experienced people showing compassion to me and seeing the need for compassion, we ran into Ukrainian refugees when we were over in Europe, and I have a really strong desire to be compassionate, to show compassion, to teach compassion to children. So as a co-founder of a children's book company, it just seemed right that is the best way to teach these values to kids is through children's literature. So that was what my platform was, and is to teach compassion through kids' books. And so that has been really fun. And the preparation was awesome because it gave me a chance to focus on my physical body, to eat well, to sleep well, to exercise. And Chandler, he was so good. He helped us set up a room in our basement to exercise. So he was my trainer. He helped me know what to do, how to try to be, more toned. And so that was really good. I'm telling you the journey because that was obviously the greatest part of it. The journey always is, what could go right. And it was so meaningful to connect with these other women who also, they were there because they've been through hard things in their lives and they wanted to help other people because of their experiences. And so meeting these women who really wanted to make a difference was really impactful to me too. And then the whole interview preparation, preparing to answer questions and to articulate my thoughts and feelings. I feel like that was really neat preparation as well. And so the pageant was just this last weekend, and I didn't win the Mrs. Utah title, but it was
She
good.
did win Mrs. Photogenic, though. I'll just throw that in there real quick. Judges Award.
I know. I saw the videos. Like, you look amazing. You look so poised and elegant.
Oh, thank you. And that was my prayer going into the pageant. Just please help me to remember the dance steps, to not trip. And so that was a success. I feel like I did it. It was something hard. It was something that made me grow. And I'm grateful for the experience. And so now mine is done. And I still can continue my platform through the rest of the year, which is great. And I will do that. But now we get to focus on Chandler for the rest of the month.
Yeah.
So before we pivot to politics, I just want to say, first of all, congratulations for going for it. Congratulations for going on that journey. That's a huge accomplishment. And I think for a couple things that I love about it. One is that I didn't realize that there were categories of married versus not married, and that there's this category that I'm going to assume that,
like, you thought that window was closed. But it's still open.
Yeah. So anyway, that and also what a beautiful way to tie together the business that you've been a part of and your role as a mother and an educator and a reader to your kids with your platform, and to give that more visibility, to give it more exposure by being in a place where you can talk about it and be seen, and sharing that message more broadly, and then just about spreading a message of compassion. I just think, and then a personal development journey of mental, physical preparation and improvement and whatever that looks like. I just think it's good for you. I just want to applaud you. I think it's and Chandler for supporting her and encouraging her and being on her team.
Thank you. Yeah.
Good teamwork, guys.
Yeah, that says a lot that your husband can be your personal trainer, not just that he has that skill set, but that you're willing to just to get in that dynamic. It can be so fraught, but you guys have a lot of experience in working together, so you have a lot of trust for that. What I loved is what you said about meeting the other women, and one of the things I would just point out to listeners is when you move into a new space where you're like, I haven't seen myself in this space before, but then you go into that space, and in your case, it was this pageant. Then you get to meet other people who have similarly said, like, nobody's forcing me to do this, but I want to grow, and I have like some motivation and a purpose, and I'm willing to put in the effort and the sacrifice to make it happen. And now you're connected with all of these other women who have not only felt a similar desire, but then put the discipline behind it, and yeah, it's like once you get in there, you get in kind of this little current and you all move along together, and it feels easier, and it feels like, oh, there's people like me.
Yeah, I love
People are willing to take a risk.
mm-hmm.
I think that helped a lot.
That's awesome.
Really, the first weekend, just for her to show. I mean, some of these things, feel really intimidating to step into, like any new adventure. Thinking like, who are these other ladies that I'm doing this with? You can really work yourself up and get yourself quite intimidated. And we've both done some of that with our current ventures. But, that first weekend, just to show up and realize everyone's human and we're all here to work together. And, that was just takes a lot of the pressure off once you get to start connecting with the people in person and not some built up thing in your mind that's got you overly worried.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people said because Tiffany committed to the pageant before I knew that I'd run for the Senate seat, so she knew she was going to do the pageant. Because a lot have said, "Oh, does she do the pageant because you're running for senator?" And I said, not at all. But it's been really nice to have the company because we've both been on a roller coaster together.
It was so good to do it together. I would say, "Oh my goodness, I'm so nervous. What am I doing? Why am I doing this?" And he would just be right there with me. "Oh my goodness, this is crazy. Why are we doing this?"
Well, I think I just want to acknowledge that I think there's a high vulnerability to both of the things that you guys are doing. They're very public. Mm-hmm. You're asking for, I think you're both you're seeking votes. I mean, I don't know how the judging process goes in a pageant, but it's kind of saying you're putting yourself out there for other people to vote one way or the other, right? Yeah. You're literally setting yourself up for a huge potential, definitely judgment and possibly rejection.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so I think that vulnerability, and to what you're saying, Emily, about seeing yourself in a new way. Tiffany, you've never done a pageant before. And Chandler, you've never run for office or held public office before, I'm guessing. Is that safe to say?
Well, let's hear the story.
And so to go into these new areas without any kind of background, it's a huge leap of faith. You have to see yourself in a new way, and that is a huge mental exercise.
That's usually the hardest part, but you have to start somewhere.
Yeah.
So tell us how running for the Senate came about.
Yeah, I mean, it's been so helpful to have Tiffany by my side because we both practice interview questions at night. I'd go over debate questions and she'd go over onstage questions, and she'd always say, "Well, at least you don't have to answer in a swimsuit."
Although that might be a good practice technique to just be like, hey, if you can do it in a swimsuit, you can do it in a suit.
That's right.
That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, maybe so. Maybe she can.
Oh, that's awesome.
So it's been really fun to kind of have her by my side to help me with it. And, for me, I think I've entered the Senate race. I didn't think it would be an open seat. It caught me by surprise that Mitt Romney wasn't going to run for another term. But when he announced that he wouldn't be, it's attracted attention from a lot of people. There are a lot of candidates in the race. That's good for Utah. I mean, the same way that Tiffany has really enjoyed connecting with the other ladies in the pageant, I've really enjoyed connecting with other candidates for this office and for others. Just last night, we had a big convention here in in Emery County, we had our local convention, and so everyone was in town, and you just get to know people and you get to meet them. And choice is good. Choice is part of the American design, the American democracy. Choice in our products. That competition keeps companies honest and improving, and services improving. And the same is true in politics. It should be that competition, helps us all work to be better and to do better, and to represent people correctly. So having just spent some time in Europe, that was really helpful. I mean, I've always paid attention to politics, and having gone to law school, I had some good training in that sense for a legislative body. But like you were saying earlier, Eric, I mean, in Europe, you see how young America is. Like, we're still an American experiment, a democratic experiment in their eyes. Their nations have been around a long time, and there's a lot to admire and appreciate from them. But being over there only made me appreciate more some of the unique things that we have here in America, and what the American experiment is, and how well it has served our nation and served the world on the whole. And so I was excited. I'm excited for the chance. We feel like we've been able to live what we would call our American dream, to go from a small town in Utah. My grandfather was a coal miner in the area. Through hard work at school, I was able to study at some of the best institutions in the world.
I think we glossed over Harvard in there as well, just to put it out there for all of our listeners.
And I mean,
sorry, keep going.
No, it's very valid. I mean, the same thing. I wondered as I headed to Harvard Law School, when I was headed there, like, who are my classmates? In my mind, these are senators' sons and presidents' grandkids, and a very privileged class. And I don't consider myself privileged at all. Grandson of I've had great blessings, wonderful family, but not like a connection to get to a place like that. And so I think that's the beauty of America as well, like meritocracy, that you work hard, sacrifice pays off, hard work is worth the effort. And so we have just felt that. We felt like being able to get as much education as I have, having those educational opportunities available through hard work, then being able to start a company and chart our own course, and experience the reward of entrepreneurship and just the fun of creating something new that creates value for others, and then to be back in this small town where our kids have like that great small town experience. They ride their bikes with friends after school. They walk over to the library. They run a little shaved ice business. Like, life has been really good for us, and we think that America is a great country, offers great things to people, and that's what I want to offer. In running for Senate, is to stand for those principles, to stand for Republican principles. That's a Republican race. I'm running as a Republican, so limited government and lower taxes, and supporting business and trying to limit regulation. Those are the things that I think have worked really well for us, gaining education and working hard. So those are some of the platforms and the issues that I care a lot about. And overall, I think, just with the choice thing, it's like there's a lot of candidates, a lot of good candidates. I hope that everyone's looking closely at each person and listening to their messages. And I think it's all about kind of figuring out what space you fill in the race. So I think, my unique offering in the race is younger than others. And I think a background that, through our experiences and through education, like you said, Eric, no formal training yet in political office. But when people talk to me about that, when I'm meeting with voters and they say, well, are you even old enough to run for this office? I just say, thank you. And I say, I could be the mayor of Orangeville, or I could be the mayor of Moab or something. I could have done that. I could do that before I ran for a seat like this, and it would be a good experience. But I think in an environment like DC, people don't necessarily know what it means to be the mayor of Orangeville versus the mayor of Tooele, or those things. Those track records are great, and those things can be very important. I think that they also, people in those spaces, if you say I got a master's from Oxford or I studied at Harvard Law, sometimes they say, oh, really, like, what class were you? I was class of this. Like, those things can also carry a lot of weight. And we see a lot of the senators these days who have had big impacts have a similar background, young, with good credentials, and they go and do a good job of representing their state. So in a crowded race, telling people that's kind of what I offer Utah is that's my unique offering.
Wow, that's awesome. Sorry, it seemed like you were going to say something.
I just want to say how much I love it.
Yeah.
And I want to tell you why for a few reasons. Here's what I love about it, Chandler, is that because I remember when Tiffany, you reached out and you mentioned that Chandler was running for office, and I just thought, that is so gutsy. That's what I thought. Like, that is so gutsy. Because, I'm not trying to flex here, but, like I've spent some time with Mitt Romney's sons for
Other
tangential reasons,
Yeah,
nothing to
charity
do with
projects.
politics. It was kind of helping with a charity organization. And like if one of Mitt Romney's sons said, I'm running for office, like, oh yeah, of course. Like, because Mitt Romney's dad was governor of Michigan, and and there's like this whole kind of a pedigree of it. And for some reason that gives us a level of comfort, like, oh well, they must know what they're doing because their dad was in office. And yet there's just an audacity to striking out on your own and saying, there's no precedent for this in my family, in my life, in my history, but why not? Why not me? And this is one of the things that I love about Sarah Blakely. I don't know if you guys know Spanx and Sarah Blakely. Her business, she's a self-made billionaire, female entrepreneur, built her own business, and she's just like, and her and her husband are just, we love them. We love following them on social media.
We don't actually know them. We sound like we're
don't,
best friends.
Sorry, we don't hang. But she's like, why not me? Because she'll say like, there's nothing special about me. And I'm not trying to say there's nothing special about you, but she's like, she sold copiers door to door for years and years, and then started a business, and she's one of the most successful female entrepreneurs. And so I just think, I love the audacity of it, Chandler. You're like, I don't have to have all this pedigree behind me to get permission. Who's going to give me permission? I am. The law says I'm old enough. I'm old enough. If I get enough signatures on the petition, I get to be in the race. If I win enough votes, I will serve as U.S. Senator. Who gives me permission? First me, then the people, then And so I just love that you're saying like, why not me?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I also loved what you said about America being a place where it's really important to have lots of different choices, and that it's a place where you don't have to have a pedigree, but I would say though, I mean, we can tell just from listening to this whole experience of all of the big accomplishments that you've made going the hard way, right? Like coal miner's grandson goes to Harvard, and you just went for it. And then you're like, okay, I know about law and I want to try being an entrepreneur. And then I'm going to go get a master's in history. And that seems like a pretty good background. And especially if you can, if you can work in a family business, I feel like you'll be okay in DC.
Well, that's why we love what you embody here and what you've done, what we've seen in your example and knowing your story, the question, like Tiffany said earlier, what could go right? I mean, it's scary sometimes to venture into those spaces when you dare ask that question. But time and again, I think if either one of us thought we had to win either of these latest ventures to make it worth doing, we wouldn't venture into it. But when you can ask yourself, like, what could go right? What good could come of this if we feel good about doing it? That's been fitting mantra for our lives. Like, we dare swing for the fence. Like, what could go right if we give this a try?
I feel like I wish I had a confetti cannon right now, because
we left all of our confetti cannons at home.
Because that is
we actually do own confetti cannons.
That is so good
Yes.
to say, like, do I have to win for this to be worth it? And for whoever's listening, whatever win means to you and in what you're pursuing, no, going for it is worth it. And so many good things will come from going for it, and how you develop and what you learn and who you meet and the messages that you're able to share and the people you're able to touch. Like, I'm like, coming and going, giving and taking, or receiving. So much good gets generated by that momentum and that willingness to take a risk and to step into the dark and to feel a little awkward and just get used to that awkward feeling. It's refreshing. and that makes you brave enough to actually go out and do something, because you don't have to. you have this beautiful business, you have this beautiful home, and you could just keep it right there, but you're feeling something more. And I love that you're going for it and that you're sharing it with us. And yeah, I think that's awesome.
I'll say this. One of my favorite books of all time is by a woman named Brenda Euland, and it's called If You Want to Write. And she talks about why people write and why people don't write. And so many of the reasons why we don't write, because there are lots of people that want to that don't. And one of the main reasons that we don't is we just feel like, oh, well, this will never get published, or this will never be a bestseller, or this, all the reasons why, your book or your short story or your poems or whatever it is, or your songs, they're never going to make their way out into the world.
I'm never going to be J.K. Rowling or Michael Jackson, so why bother?
Yeah. And so she says, the very act of writing will improve your life because it will improve you. And then if it goes out into the world and gets published and becomes, a popular book or any of those other things that we talked about, that's bonus. And yes, I know we need to pay the bills and you have to have an income and all those sorts of things. And so I'm not trying to discount that part of it. But this book was so helpful to me to help me to write, because I realized that just by virtue of writing, I'm improving my life. Whether anybody reads it, sees it, hears it, and you guys as running a book company, you deal with books all the time. And just think of all the books that are never published, that never get into the hands of readers. Those writers are still better off having done it than leaving it undone. And I bring that back to you, which is, it's worth doing whether you win or not. Competing in a pageant makes you a better person. It makes you a better mother, a better wife, a better citizen. And running for office, whether you win or not, it elevates the dialogue. You're going to come out of it as a better person because you've articulated your thoughts, you have new skills, you have new capabilities.
You've sharpened your convictions.
And you've made us as voters, as citizens, think about things in a new way. And so anyway, I just applaud you both for doing these things that are scary, that are seeing yourselves in new ways and taking high vulnerability risks. And so, and anyway, I just think, is it worth doing just because it's winning? That's my big takeaway from today.
Yeah, it's worth doing even if you don't win.
That's it. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. That's so good and so inspiring. Yeah, I think I'm done here. If there's anything else you want to share.
If this mic was not on a stand, I would drop it.
Well, all I want to say is, feel like it takes one to know one. I mean, I feel like like I said early on, you guys have been formative in our lives, kind of to see how intentionally you've been and to see your trajectory. And so I feel like we speak the same language. You've been inspiring to us. Thank you for saying nice things about what we're doing, but we feel inspired by what you're doing.
That's right, yeah. And thank you for having us, and we'll have to connect for a sail trip later.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
Let's do it.
It's on my bucket
Bring
list.
it full circle with that book gift.
Yeah.
Okay, maybe we could talk more about that after we'll
stop recording and then we'll talk about that. But hey.
But I hope listeners I hope you're as inspired as I have been. This isn't just one story. This is like time after time after time we're hearing that Tanners have said, let me try that. I don't know. Nobody I know has ever done that. I'm going to go for it. And I'm going to do it with my 4 kids. And I'm going to, go from one thing to the next without any sleep sometimes. But anyway, I'm so inspired. And that's why we just want to keep telling stories. And hopefully this one will resonate with you. And there's something for everyone here.
Okay, so this is super exciting. Chandler and Tiffany, where can people go to learn about you? And if they want to be supportive, but at the very least, just find you and get more acquainted. Where should they go?
Yeah, I mean, the support from people it means so much. If people think, if they want to learn more about me and my candidacy, tannerforsenate.com is the best place to go. They can go read more about my background, about some specific issues.
tannerforsenate.com.
Yep.
All right.
Yeah, and that's for FOR.
FOR. Not the number 4. Yeah. That would be kind of ghetto, like Tanner Can't force in it. All right, we'll put that in the show notes. Awesome. So,
Okay.
in addition to running for office, you have your company, Bookroo, which is the book subscription company. Where can people go to learn more about it or possibly even subscribe to your service?
Yeah, it's really easy. It's just bookroo.com, BOOKROO.com.
Got it. BOOKROO.com, Bookroo. And they're beautiful, gorgeous packages as you might imagine.
Well, that's awesome. That's so fun. Well, thanks again for chatting with us today, you guys. It's going to be inspiring.
Great to
Thank
be here.
you.
Thanks.
Thanks for listening. What could go right? Hey, it's Eric. If you want to go sailing with us this year, here's how that works. We have a few more trips planned for this year. There's 2 ways that you can come sailing with us. One is you can book by the cabin. And 2, you can just get a group of 6 to 10 people together. Let me know. We'll check our calendars, find a time that works, pick a place that you're excited about that I want to go to, and we'll make it happen. So reach out and let me know if you want to get a group together. If you want to book by the cabin, here's what you do. Go to theawesomefactory.nyc/sailing 2024, and you can get the rundown on what's happening, how it all works. And at the bottom, you can schedule a time to chat with me. I'll answer all your other questions and see if we can find a trip that's a match for you. So if you want to get out on the water, go sailing somewhere fun this year, would love to join you there. Thanks so much.